Good morning, guys. Today we're going to work on setting up this Holley Sniper EFI. I have a dual sync distributor on this, and as I was going through it I couldn't get it to fire up. I cycled the fuel several times. I followed the instructions. I actually went through and looked at, there's like 10 steps to look through and checking all my voltages. I just couldn't figure it out, and finally in an act of desperation I started treating it like a carburetor, and I came up here as I was starting it and blipped the throttle open, and sure enough it fired right up. So what I had to do was screw down my throttle position sensor, the idling screw, and what that allows you to do is hold the throttle open without holding it by hand. And I simply screwed it down just like you would a carburetor, and it sat there and it ran, it idled. The issue we're having, I believe, is that we're trying to set too many things at once. So what we're going to do actually is disable the idle air control circuit. And we're going to plug the hole, and we're going to set fuel for idle. After it warms up to 160 degrees, we're actually going to let the fuel set itself, and we're going to disable idle spark control in the computer. And I'll show you guys how to do that. But the goal is, rather than trying to get this EFI system to program more than one thing at a time, we're going to focus on one at a time. So your idle air control, at the back of your intake, or at the back of your throttle body setup, right behind your primaries and secondaries, you have a little triangle back here. And what we're going to do is tape this off. We're going to actually put a piece of duct tape over it, tape it off, and the goal is to keep it from sucking any air in there, and hopefully we'll get that set and then turn it off. We're going to adjust the TPS by screwing in that screw like you would on your regular throttle linkage on a carburetor. We're going to screw it in 2 to 3 times so it's nice and high. We're going to set all the controls we want in the computer as far as where we want it to idle. And once it reaches that temperature, above 160, we're going to go ahead and screw that down until it's 50 RPM lower than where we want it. What we're doing is we're giving the idle air control, when we enable it, we're giving it some room to work with. The engine runs great. I didn't hear any noises. My background is I've been a mechanic for almost 20 years now, and I've worked on engines as big as 10,000 cubic inches, giant 16-cylinder diesels. So this is nothing new to me. If you guys have any issues when you rebuild your engine, it might not be your fault. I've had engines that ran like trash because of a bad spark plug. A brand new spark plug was cracked on the inside, and there's nothing you could know until afterwards. But this was really giving me a headache. I ran extra ground wires to it, tried to follow the directions they gave me, and it just had me baffled. I was ready to quit and try again a different day. But like I said, once I hit that throttle and it opened up, I mean, I went through here. I was worried about flooding. I just did everything I could, and nothing worked. So if you're at that point, and maybe this will help you, we'll go through one thing at a time. Alright, again, I tried to let the engine warm up, no dice, so we're going to go ahead and go through this, the handheld. As we can see on initial startup, we can see that it's 172 degrees right now, and here are the settings I got. We're going to go ahead and double check our timing, and we're doing that by going to tuning. We're going to go to basic idle, and we want this at 18 degrees. I was playing with it, trying to get it to work, but right now we have idle speed set at 850. That's where we want it. Going to go back, go to spark. We're going to change ignition timing at idle to 18 degrees because I think that's where I want it. Save that. Now before we cycle this on and off, we need to go ahead and disable our spark at idle. To do that, we need to go to tuning, advanced. It's either advanced idle, or yeah, so it's under advanced idle and idle spark. It's enabled. We want to go ahead and disable this. Save. Home. And now we need to set that and make sure it's in there. We're going to cycle the ignition off and then back on and make sure it's saved in there. We're going to tape up that triangular hole I told you guys about. We're going to tape it up, make sure it's nice and tight, and we're going to turn that idle screw in 2 to 3 times. So let's go ahead and cycle this, and then we'll double check and make sure it stayed. what you hear is the fuel pump cutting on, and that's what it does for 2 to 3 seconds. So again, we're going to double check tuning, advanced idle, spark. It's still disabled. So we're going to go back to the main screen, monitor this, and just go to initial startup. And we're going to go ahead and watch this. We're still above 170 degrees. Remember, we have to be at 160 to learn. So I'll take you guys to the front of the engine. We'll turn that idle screw in, and go ahead and fire this up again. Now that we're at the front of the engine, we have a really big piece of tape on this idle air control. Right? And we covered up that whole triangle. I'd rather have too much tape on there than not enough. We'll pull it off and deal with that later. But make sure you turn the throttle linkage for idle. Make sure you turn that in 2 to 3 times. And what we're going to do is we'll turn that down after it starts up. So once it starts up, we're going to go ahead and turn that down till it's 50 RPM below where we want. And we're going to go ahead and let it tune that in. So once it tunes in how much fuel it wants, then we're going to go ahead and remove that tape, re-enable our spark, and let it set the rest. So once you guys have done that a couple times, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to turn in that throttle linkage. You're going to have to turn that screw counterclockwise to let that TPS sensor go back to 0. You're going to have to do that quarter turn. Sometimes I can get a half turn in there, you know, because I was 2 to 3%. If it starts becoming too much, you might have to just do a quarter turn, eighth of a turn until you get it down there. So what it's trying to do is it's trying to figure out your air-fuel ratio, and it's trying to balance that and deciding how much fuel we should give it to maintain whatever your setting was. So ours was 850 RPM. It'll die down 200 RPM and then come back up, and it's just trying to find that balance is all it's doing. I shut off the engine, turned back on my spark, right, and then recycled it, cranked it back up after I untaped that idle air control, and it balanced right out, fixed itself. So now it should just start right up. That's all I got for you guys. I hope this helps. Like I said, if the process doesn't work the first time right, with everything disabled and that thing taped off, you might have to do this once, twice, 3 times. But as you can see, from where we first started, it was just revving all over the place, and I couldn't control it. It couldn't control itself. Do you guys have any questions? Just let me know. before you crank this thing up, remember that block was taken and cleaned out. So there's a lot of detergents and stuff inside the coolant passages. I would go ahead and run a cleaner through that, drain it. You know, in between times you're cranking it and warming it up, I would keep changing this fluid until it comes out clear, and then put radiator fluid in there. Same with the oil. You know, you're putting fresh oil in there, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff in those passages that filters are going to catch most of it. But we're going to go ahead and change this oil now, even though it looks clean. We still have to protect our investment. So I hope this helps you guys. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll tell you the issues I ran into. But from here, we can go on and rebuild this transmission. We're putting a 4L80E in here, and it's going to be a blast. It's a hot day, and I'm done. It's time to crack open a beer.